Show. It's time to stop just surviving, and it's time to begin to thrive. It's time to live happier and healthier. Turn stress into strength. Noted author Debbie Mandel will show you how to move beyond personal doubts and fears and into positive perception to turn on your inner light. Here's your host, Debbie Mandel.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to my show. Our guest expert is Martha Beck, Ph.D. She taught sociology and social psychology at Harvard. She's a life coach and monthly columnist for O Magazine and is the author of Finding Your Way in a Wild New World. If you are looking for the tools to change and maximize your potential, get ready to be inspired with nature as your guide. Welcome, Martha.
Oh, thank you so much.
Now, I found this very amusing. You're a life coach who uses wordlessness as a technique. Could you explain? And use some words.
It's getting more and more awkward. We will now have a moment of silence. I used to do talky therapy-like coaching, and I began to realize, as I lived my own life, that I was actually more enriched by silence, especially if it was in nature, than I was by all the talking I could do. And I have a son who's 24 years old, but he has Down syndrome, and he rarely speaks. And in his presence, and especially in nature, I found myself dropping into a state where I felt very blissful, and things seemed to come more easily to me. And I started researching it and found that ancient peoples of all cultures would drop into silence as the first step in doing something magical or sacred. So I started doing that, and I found that as a coach, I can take people, say, into the wilderness with me, and they learn more in a few hours than they would in years of talking.
I think that makes a lot of sense, especially when we look at the writing process. We want to show rather than tell, because what does tell mean? And also with technology overload in our time period, I couldn't think of anything better.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
We are so bombarded by words. And let me, for example, one of the coaching techniques I love best is to take two people, say a couple, put them in an enclosed pasture with a herd of horses, and they have to herd the horses in specific patterns without speaking to each other. You can do this. You just have to learn to communicate telepathically.
She's laughing.
Yeah, I'm having fun with it, but this is literally what I do.
And how did you tap into your telepathic ability? I know you can bend silverware. I'll invite you over. I'll have plastic, but how did you discover this ability, or that you even wanted to do this?
It was so interesting. My son has a very magical quality about him, so he brought some of that into my life. And then I was in Africa for a book tour for the book that I wrote about him, and I had a dream that I was going to be visited by my ancestors. And I thought, how funny, I had a weird little African dream. And I told some friends from the Shangaan tribe when I was out at a game preserve, and they ran away. And I thought, what did I say? I did something wrong. And it turns out that if you have that dream, you have to see a shaman, a medicine person, right away. And so they found this little woman who just escaped from Mozambique, and she gave me this sort of oracular reading, and she said, you have to study the ways of people like me and teach your people. And I was like, oh, it was a strange experience. I mean, there was something going on with this chick. She had something real, and I got very intrigued and started doing research on the ancient ways of doing magic, real magic.
So, in other words, was it anything, I mean, you're very well schooled, and you have a very rich academic background. What you're reminding me of is like the 17th century, the four humors, and really blending in a way science with magic, alchemy, if you will, that kind of transformation to the soul. So we do have that people seem to want that magical power. Now, maybe people need this magical power to deal with what's going on, because if we go to the existentialists, I mean, most of us will be jumping off a cliff.
Right, like the fiscal cliff that's coming right at us. Everything is quite unsettling right now. And I should say that by magic, I'm going to quote Arthur C. Clarke, who said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So if we took a cell phone into the Amazon to an uncontacted tribe and showed it to them, they'd say, oh, that's magic. And we'd say, no, that's technology. It can help you get through the world. And then they would give us a concoction of one of the millions of plant medicines they've made. And we'd say, oh, my gosh, how did you know that these three plants, when combined, would become a psychoactive substance? And they would say, well, the plants sing to us, and they give us the recipes. And we would say, oh, my God, magic. And they would say, no, technology. So they have a technology. We're the ones that don't acknowledge that other cultures have learned things through the ages that are really, truly workable. We call them magic, but really they're just another kind of science. Mm-hmm. And right now, our world has gone from being sort of rational and ordered in the 20th century to being almost as wild as, say, being lost at sea. The amount of information flowing through our society, the amount of change, has become very chaotic. And the way humans find their way through chaotic, unknown environments is to utilize these ancient technologies.
We are going back to our roots, I think, in that way, looking at more natural foods, because we do have an obesity epidemic. And you know, every time I turn on the light in the house, flick that switch, I say, wow, that is magic, Martha, for me. It is. Technologically idiotic. I mean, I think it's magic.
It is. Every time the water runs by itself, Einstein said there are two ways to see the world. One is if nothing is a miracle, and the other as if everything is. I like the everything option because it makes me happy.
Yes, I vote for happiness, and I think, to me, it's almost like a moral obligation to be happy, because it's in this joy that we find our core and we bring other people to this kind of level. That's very important, I think. And that's coming from the other side, you know. So I loved what you did in the book with the role of paradox. I think life is a tension of opposites. Could you talk about that, how you find your way through paradox? But we're going to commercial break, and we will return with Dr. Martha Beck, author of Finding Your Way in a Wild New World.
Now you can take Debbie Mandel home with you. Her book, Turn On Your Inner Light, Fitness for Body, Mind, and Soul, will help you decompress with healthy, positive, concrete solutions. Common life challenges are presented so that you can quickly find the help you need. Emotional tips, original meditations, and a fun and easy-to-follow fitness workout for each mindset. This revolutionary new method will help you rewire mind and body to take back your power. Get it on Amazon.
Are you overwhelmed with the burden of taking care of children, parents, or both? Are you taking care of everyone else except yourself? It's time to change your habits and re-energize. Debbie Mandel gives you an innovative and easy-to-follow program for good health and happiness. In her magical new book, Changing Habits, The Caregiver's Total Workout, Debbie Mandel shows you step-by-step how to find the optimal balance between giving and receiving, and guides you to exercise and eat right to take care of yourself. What are you waiting for? Read Changing Habits and start training for your life. Life does not need to be a burden. Get Changing Habits, The Caregiver's Total Workout, on Amazon.
Listening to the Turn On Your Inner Light show. I'm your host, Debbie Mandel, and I'm speaking with Dr. Martha Beck, author of Finding Your Way in a Wild New World. Now, Martha, before commercial break, you were going to explain the pathway to paradox.
Yeah. So, all ancient cultures have ways of silencing the verbal chatter in the mind. Now, a lot of people are familiar with meditation, which is one way of doing that. But there are other ways, and one of the ways, and I also, by the way, loved applying brain science, learning whatever was newest in neurology, neuroscience, and applying it to the ancient practices I found. And the path of paradox is giving the brain something to chew on that actually stops it from its usual verbal functioning. So, for example, everybody's heard what is the sound of one hand clapping? Mm-hmm. That's meant to stump the brain. Or what is reflected in two mirrors that are perfectly facing each other? What you do is you give a question that has no logical answer, and so the logical part of the brain just shuts down operation. And this is what the Japanese call satori, this moment of awakening to a place beyond language. So the verbal brain can process about 40 bits of information per second, which is a lot. The nonverbal processes about 11 million bits per second. So, for example, when Jill Bolte Taylor, the neuroanatomist at Harvard, had a left hemisphere stroke that took her speech power away for a few years, she was actually much more aware of much more data, because without the verbal brain, the rest of the brain wakes up and has a vast ability to comprehend and solve problems. So that's what the path of paradox is, just anything that you can do to stump yourself. And I'll tell you the quick way right now.
Okay.
Take your worst fear. We can do this right now. So, Debbie, what's your worst fear right now?
I'm acrophobic. So if I can imaginatively put myself the top of a rock on top of a cliff, you've got me there.
Okay, so
I'm getting
ask yourself, it's very important that you get the verbal brain engaged with this. So what is the scariest thought you can think about being up high?
Vertigo and going over the cliff.
Okay, so if I go up high, I'll get vertigo and I'll fall off a cliff. Now, you ask yourself, could the exact opposite of that sentence also be true? So what is the opposite of vertigo?
Steadfastness.
Okay,
focal.
And what is the opposite of falling?
Being upright, being rooted.
Okay. So if I go to a high place, I could be steadfast and uplifted. Could that be true in any sense?
Yes, it could.
In fact, it leads you to a new way of thinking about high places. What is a high place? You don't have to go up a cliff. You could go to a high place right now in your mind.
Mm-hmm. And I am, by the way, because I'm very visual, and the words conjure it up. I am on a high place, and I feel very secure.
So steadfast and uplifted, the opposite of falling in some ways might be flying.
Don't push
so
it.
Instead of I fear high places, I'm acrophobic, the brain starts to conceptualize a new you. It starts to say, I love the high places. Just a little bit. And you don't love high places, and yet, in this sense, you do love high places. And that's a paradox that can jolt you out of your normal way of seeing yourself in the world, and that's where magical insights flood in.
I could see that because I'm still looking at it, by the way. We're not pushing the flying part.
Oh, all right. That would be me.
That would be you. But I can see it, and I think it can lead to a form of success. Because metaphorically, being afraid of heights might be afraid of maximizing a potential and taking a leap and putting your art out there.
Yeah, so, being seen by everyone and having a view of a lot of the landscape. All of those things, hidden in a fear of high places may be a fear of being as big as you are meant to be in the world.
Yes,
so it starts to unlock you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what paradoxes in ancient traditions are meant to do. They're not meant to force you to go to a high place. They're meant to jolt your brain out of its habitual thought patterns so that you go into beginner's mind, which is open to all things.
Yes.
Now we're talking about some magic.
Yes, and I think along with beginner's mind, there's probably beginner's heart. So that you match, and that way you are open to feelings that you never thought you had, and to really listen. I think the goal, maybe if I understand your work correctly, to be wordless, to come into yourself, is to really listen to the sounds, and let's go to Simon and Garfunkel, the sounds of silence, but
right.
They're very powerful.
Although they didn't he was expressing the fear of, the dead silence of keeping a secret.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another kind of silence. There's a silence right now that's underneath the words we're saying, and if you feel for it, interesting things happen in your brain. If you listen right now for the silence underneath the sound of my voice and everything else around you, feel for it. Like, find the silence underneath the sounds. If you pay attention, you'll actually feel a physical shift in your body as you search for that. Something happens when you go looking for silence.
I felt like a fist coming out of me reaching out to pull something. I mean, that's the image that came up for me.
And can you find the silence? Even now, even as we're talking?
Yes.
The silence is always the framework for whatever is happening.
Yes, it's sort of like hovering over things, helicoptering over the self. That's for me. That's what it would mean to me.
And can you pay as much attention to it as you pay to sounds?
Yes. It's more desirable, actually.
Say more about that.
It just has this, soul-climbing effect.
Mm-hmm.
And
again, with the high places, it's
yes,
awesome.
I guess, that's what's coming up for me as we speak. So it gives me the sense of peace and power, like an inner power block. Tom's giving me the signal for commercial break.
Okay.
And with that potent remark, we go to commercial break, and we will return with Dr. Martha Beck, author of Finding Your Way in a Wild New World. Dear listeners, I'm excited to tell you about my new book, Addicted to Stress. This is a message you need to hear. Are you addicted to stress? Do you do it all while everyone depends on you? Where's all this pressure coming from? It is coming from inside you. This is why my publisher, John Wiley, asked me to write Addicted to Stress, a woman's 7-step program to reclaim joy and spontaneity in life. This fun-to-read book teaches proven strategies to reclaim your life, silence your inner critic, build a healthy body, and reframe your thoughts to change your life for the better. Dare to be happy without the guilt. Addicted to Stress is easy to get. It's available at Barnes & Noble and other fine bookstores everywhere. You can also buy it at Amazon and other online retailers. We're back with Dr. Martha Beck, author of Finding Your Way in a Wild New World. Now, so many people today suffer from autoimmune diseases. And you were very candid in your book, and you said that you suffered from fibromyalgia.
Oh, yes, indeed.
And could you tell us about that and how you dealt with the condition to eventually move away from what was familial? Because I believe your mother had it as well.
Yeah, and my sisters.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So they don't really know much about it, but it's a chronic pain syndrome, and mine set in very early. I was hit by a car while jogging. I was running marathons when I was 18, 19 years old, and then I got hit by this car, and they said, lie down until the pain goes away, and it went away 12 years later. But in those 12 years, I sought all kinds of help and developed other symptoms that were surgically verifiable and so on, and they all pointed to some syndrome of autoimmune disease that they didn't really understand. All of the conditions that were diagnosed were considered progressive and incurable, and I now have virtually no symptoms, which is not supposed to happen. And the reason is that I was doing this research about ancient people, medicine people, and I found out there's something called a shaman sickness. And that means if somebody has sort of chosen the destiny of trying to heal the world's miseries, often that person becomes ill in a way that doesn't respond to medical treatment. And the only way you can feel better is if you recognize what you're supposed to do in the world and begin training to do it. And as soon as I started just playing with the idea that maybe, I've been sick for 12 years, maybe I have a shaman sickness, suddenly it all started to get better. And that was like, oh, it's very reinforcing to have 12 years of pain suddenly go away.
Well, I think would you recommend that to so many people who are afflicted? I noticed that it does tend to hit women predominantly. And also that in the random sample that I have encountered, these women were sensitive, and they are caregivers in various forms. And I think that it's almost like, does fibromyalgia, what they would say, it was like a burning sensation in the body. And it like their blood was on fire.
It's like having one of those horrible sore throats that makes you afraid to even swallow because it hurts so much, only it's in every bit of your soft tissue.
And it seemed like, because it was blood, and blood to me conjures up relationships, family, and so forth, that maybe somebody in the family was almost draining them.
You think? Clearly, you may be referring to my second memoir, for which I got in a lot of trouble.
Really?
Oh, yes. I grew up in a very, very Mormon household and ended up leaving the religion. So, I'll say no more about that just at this point. I'll just say you're on the right track, Debbie.
Okay. That's good because I fumbled my metaphoric self. I'm always looking for the parallels, and I happen to, coming back to this golden thread of paradox or this tension of opposites, because to me, I was always confused in life, Martha. We would say to people, climb this, don't be a quitter, and then we'd say quit while you're ahead.
Exactly.
And so I didn't know what to make of things, so that meant as a little girl I better start exploring on my own.
Exactly.
And I want to tell people that your book is so wonderful, this adventure in the book, the wildness in the book, the fear, the coming in touch with the self, and you wrote it so beautifully, and it was a page turner, because not only are the words so visual and alive with all the senses, if there's sound in there's smell, it's not just static, but also I was so curious, I just had to know. I mean, who says about a self-help book that it's a page turner?
Well, you have made my year by using those words.
Well,
I'm very grateful, but I found that going into the wild woke something up in me. I never thought I'd get to go outside again, really, after I got sick.
Well, on that note, our time together has flown. So I urge everyone to read this book. Now, do you have a website where we can learn more about you?
MarthaBeck.com.
Oh, how simple is that? Well, thank you so much for being a delightful and instructive guest.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Affirmation of the week. Is there a pebble in your shoe making your journey more painful? Remove it. And now for the latest medical trends. We rely on our visual system more heavily than previously thought in determining the causality of events. A team of researchers has shown that in making judgments about causality, we don't always need to use cognitive reasoning. In some cases, our visual brain, the brain areas that process what the eyes sense, can make these judgments rapidly and automatically. When it comes to losing weight, and I know this is a popular resolution, people tend to focus on eating less and exercising more. But results of a new survey of psychologists suggest dieters should pay attention to the role that emotions play in weight gain and loss. They have to understand what their triggers, their emotional triggers are, if they hope to succeed. A new study led by Columbia University Medical Center researchers has found that leptin, a hormone that plays a key role in energy metabolism, fertility, and bone mass, also regulates airway diameter. The findings could explain why obese people are prone to asthma and suggest that medications that increase leptin signaling might relieve asthma in obese people. And the Journal of the American Medical Association reports that vitamin D has no effect on the pain or slowing the progression of knee osteoarthritis. Oh well. Daily doses of a liquid containing peanut powder in gradually increasing amounts enabled patients with peanut allergy to safely consume peanuts in amounts at least 10 times greater than their baseline. As the spotlight on healthy eating and nutrition gets even brighter, we need more colorful and graphic nutrition information on product packages to help consumers better understand the information. And studies show that patients who give their doctors high marks in communication are more likely to fill prescriptions. Well, we come to the close of another show. I have an educational website, totally free, on stress management, health, and wellness. TurnOnYourInnerLight.com. All the radio shows with the guest experts are archived for your listening pleasure. Click on a link and it takes you right into YouTube and you can listen to the interview at your leisure. Subscribe to my free newsletter from TurnOnYourInnerLight.com and you will get the latest radio alerts emailed to you, so you can click on the link and get a new article on stress management, along with all the health tips I never get to say because I just have too many. So turn on to TurnOnYourInnerLight.com and spread the word. Have a wonderful week and see you on the radio.